I've carried this burden for years, the kind of secret you don't share, not with family, not with friends, and certainly not with strangers. But keeping quiet comes at a price. It locks you inside your own mind, leaving you alone with the echoes of your pain. I can't live that way anymore. So here I am, finally putting into words what I've avoided for so long. I grew up in what most would call a normal family. My brother, Caden Burke, was the kind of person everyone admired. He had an effortless charm and a knack for making people laugh, even when they didn't feel like it. My parents adored him, teachers raved about him, and to the outside world, he seemed perfect. For a long time, I believed that too. But there was a side of Caden no one else saw. A side that only came out late at night when the rest of the house was asleep. I was 10 years old the first time it happened. I woke up to find him standing by my bed. He said he couldn't sleep and asked if he could stay with me. I didn't think anything of it. He was my brother after all. Why would I? At first it was subtle. A hand resting a moment too long. A touch that felt wrong in a way I couldn't quite explain. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew something was very, very wrong. I wish I could say I did something about it. That I screamed or told my parents or ran away. But I didn't. Every time I froze. Because what do you do when the person hurting you is someone you're supposed to love? Someone who's supposed to love you? I know others have been through something similar. Maybe you were a child too, confused, scared, and unsure of what was happening or why it was happening to you. Maybe, like me, you grew up carrying the weight of those experiences, unable to speak them aloud. If that's you, I want you to know you're not alone. This story isn't easy to tell. It's messy, painful, and filled with moments I'd give anything to forget. But it's my truth, and it's time I stopped running from it. So, if you're here reading this, I ask you to stay with me. Hear what I have to say, because this isn't just about what happened to me. It's about what happens when we finally confront the darkest parts of our past. If my story resonates with you, or if you think it could help someone else, please share it. Your support means everything to me as I take this step toward speaking my truth. Caden Burke was always the golden child. You know the type, the one who could do no wrong. He was 2 years older than me, and everyone seemed to adore him. My parents couldn't stop bragging about his grades, his smile, and his ability to charm anyone he met. Teachers loved him, neighbors waved to him, and strangers would tell my mum what a polite young man he was. On the outside, we looked like the perfect family. My dad worked long hours, but always made it home for dinner. My mum kept the house spotless, baking cookies that smelled like something out of a movie. We had birthday parties, family vacations, and matching Christmas sweaters. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. My dad had a temper. He never hit us, but his yelling could make you feel small, like you'd done something terribly wrong, even if you hadn't. My mum would smooth things over, pretending everything was fine. But the tension never really disappeared. And Caden knew exactly how to stay out of trouble. He always said the right thing, did the right thing, and was the kid my parents could be proud of. As a child, I worshipped him. He was my big brother, my protector. He taught me how to ride a bike, shared his Halloween candy, and stood up for me when kids at school were mean. I trusted him completely. I loved him, and for a long time, I thought he loved and protected me too. The first time something felt off, I was about 7. We were playing hide and seek, and I hid in my parents' closet. Caden found me, but instead of tagging me and running off, he sat down next to me. He said this was our secret spot, where no one else could find us. At the time, it felt special, like he was including me in something just for us, but then he put his arm around me, and his hand lingered in a way that didn't feel playful. I remember feeling confused more than anything. It wasn't scary, just strange, like something wasn't quite right, but I didn't know why. As the years went on, those moments happened more often. He'd sit too close, touch my arm or leg, or tickle me in ways that felt less like playing and more like testing boundaries. By the time I was 10, I was terrified of him. I hated going to bed, knowing he might come into my room. I hated the way he smiled at me, like he knew something I didn't. And I hated myself for not saying anything, for not doing anything to make it stop. But how could I? He was Caden, the one everyone loved, the one my parents always praised. If I said something, who would believe me? Who would want to believe that their perfect son could do something so terrible? There was one night, I think I was 12, when I tried to tell my mom I didn't want to share a room with him during a visit to my grandparents. I told her I needed privacy, that I was getting older. She laughed it off, saying, "Oh, honey, Caden wouldn't hurt a fly. Don't be silly." And that was the end of the conversation. So I stayed quiet. For years I said nothing. But the silence came at a cost. I couldn't look at him without feeling a mix of anger, fear, and guilt. And I still loved him. I didn't know how to stop caring about him. He was my brother after all. But at the same time, I despised him for what he had done, for what he was still doing. That contradiction tore me apart. How do you continue loving someone who has caused you so much pain? Pain you can't even fully put into words. How do you find the strength to hate someone you're supposed to love? Back then, I had no answers. And even now, I'm still searching. But one thing I've learned is that ignoring the truth didn't make it disappear. It didn't erase the memories, dull the pain, or make me feel any less alone. Thanksgiving was always a big event in our family. My mom loved preparing a feast, and the house would be packed with cousins, aunts, uncles, everyone gathering to share food and stories. It was meant to be a time for joy and togetherness, but for me, it marked the night everything changed. I was 17, and by then, I'd perfected the art of pretending. Pretending everything was okay. Pretending I didn't dread family events where I'd have to see Caden. Pretending the memories of those nights he'd come into my room didn't haunt me. But that night, I couldn't keep pretending. The day unfolded like it always did, chaotic and noisy. The kitchen was filled with clattering dishes and chatter. My mum was issuing orders about the turkey. My dad was joking with my uncles. And Caden, as always, was charming everyone. He helped my mum set the table, made people laugh, and played the role of the perfect son and brother. If you looked at him, you'd think he was flawless. But every time I looked his way, I felt sick. After dinner, everyone settled into the living room, content and relaxed, either watching football or catching up. I needed to escape the noise, the laughter, and most of all, the sight of Caden sitting there, as though he hadn't stolen pieces of me I could never reclaim. So, I slipped upstairs to the guest room, seeking some quiet. I should have locked the door, but I didn't. Maybe I thought he wouldn't follow me anymore, that I was too old, or that he had finally changed. I was wrong. It wasn't long before I heard the door creak open behind me. I froze, just like I always did. There he was, standing in the doorway, smiling as if nothing was wrong. He sat on the edge of the bed, making up some excuse about wanting to talk and asking if I was okay. I don't remember how I responded. Probably something dismissive, hoping he'd leave. But he didn't. Instead, he reached out, placing his hand on mine, then moving it to my leg. Before I could react, his hand was somewhere it had no right to be. It only lasted a few seconds. I think he saw the look on my face, the mix of horror and rage. He laughed, as though it was all a joke, and stood up, telling me not to take everything so seriously. Then he left, leaving me sitting there, trembling and trying to process what had just happened. I couldn't go back downstairs after that. I stayed in the room, staring blankly at the wall, feeling dirty, shattered and furious. Since that night, I've done everything possible to avoid him. I skip family gatherings unless I know he won't be there. I've blocked his number, ignored his texts, and pretended not to see him when we cross paths. But no matter how much distance I put between us, he's always there, in the back of my mind. And when I do see him, I laugh. I don't know why. Maybe it's my way of pretending it doesn't hurt, convincing myself that I've moved on. But I know he knows. I see it in the way he avoids looking at me for too long, the way he acts like nothing happened. He knows what he did, and he knows I remember. I've worked hard to heal. I've gone to therapy, read books on recovery, and done everything I can to leave the past behind. For the most part, I'm okay. But then I hear his name, or see someone who looks like him, and it all comes flooding back. The shame, the anger, the guilt. I hate that he still has this hold over me. That after all these years, I'm still fighting to reclaim what he took. So, why am I telling this story now? Because I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending this didn't happen. This isn't just about that night or the nights before it. It's about standing up and saying, this happened. It was real, and it wasn't my fault. I'm saying it for myself and for anyone else who's ever felt like their pain didn't matter. It does. You do. Sometimes I wonder why the memories still haunt me. It's been years, decades even. I've built a life for myself, moved forward in ways I never thought I could. Therapy has helped, and I've worked through so many of the memories. I've told myself countless times that I'm stronger than what happened to me. But there are still moments when it feels as raw as the day it happened. It's not constant, like it used to be. But certain things, holidays, family events, even a familiar smell or song, bring it all rushing back. In those moments, I wonder, what if I confronted him? What if I made him admit what he did? But then I remind myself that not all answers bring peace. Some only reopen old wounds. I'll never fully understand why he did what he did. Was it about power? Was there something broken in him? Or did he do it simply because he could? These are questions I'll never have answers to, and I've come to terms with that. Healing, I've learned, isn't about getting closure from the person who hurt you. It's about finding it within yourself. For me, that's meant taking control of my story, choosing to share it instead of letting it define me. Even now, when I see him at a wedding or some family gathering, I still laugh. Not because it's funny, but because it's the only way I know how to cope. It's this strange, nervous reflex, my body's way of pretending that everything is fine. But the truth is, I'm still learning how to live with it, one day at a time. I can see it on his face. He knows. He's fully aware of what my laughter really means and what thoughts are behind it. And I believe That realization terrifies him more than anything else. I used to despise him for what he did, for taking away my innocence, my sense of security, and my trust. A part of me still holds on to that anger. But now, more than anything, I pity him, because while I've put in the effort to heal and move forward, he's the one who has to live with the weight of his actions every single day. To anyone out there watching this who has been through something similar, please know this. You are not alone, and your pain is valid. It doesn't matter how much time has passed or how deeply you've tried to suppress it. Healing isn't a straight path. It's messy and takes time, but it is possible. And it begins with owning your truth, even when it feels impossible. To my brother, if you're seeing this, you know exactly what you did. I've spent far too many years wondering why. But I'm done letting those questions occupy space in my mind. This is no longer about you. It's about reclaiming my strength and my story. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening to what I've shared. Talking about this isn't easy, but my hope is that it might make someone else feel a little less alone.